To my current and future subscribers, I appreciate you. I'm back in this bitch. I know some of y'all were thinking you'd never hear from me again. You know, it's been a while.
Kept you waiting, huh?
But all I ask is that you share some of your time with me today, and that's it. So, as you can read in the title, the point of this video is to address the current state of Insomniac Spider-Man, because as things are now, they're kind of in limbo. But I'll elaborate more on that in a little bit. But as for now, go ahead and sit back, pop you a cold bottle of water, subscribe, and enjoy the video. So, like I was saying earlier, Insomniac is in a really bad position right now because through some late content drops, cut content, leaks, and just overall lack of foresight, they are forever going to be criticized. Because regardless of what they do with the Spider-Man 2 title going forward, the overall fanbase's attitude towards the company and the game is damned if they do, damned if they don't. They can't catch a break. So before we can break down how the series is doing currently, we need to do a quick recap of the roots and how we actually got here. Marvel's Spider-Man 2018 has been regarded as the best Spider-Man video game of all time. Development started in 2014, and it wouldn't be for another 2 years before we saw a trailer at E3 2016. And that's where we started to see the glimpses of the greatness that would eventually come. The entire world was on fire waiting for this game to drop. The visuals were amazing, they looked like they were trying to tell a story that's true to the character. Everything was just rolling good. And to everybody's surprise, the game not only met every expectation, but exceeded almost every expectation set upon it. Swinging around the city felt satisfying, fluid, and though kind of basic by today's standards, it still provided a great foundation to build upon and that you could see the potential going from there. There were so many approaches to combat and all of them were equally valid. Approaching a group of enemies stealthily didn't feel pointless. Until it did. See, that's the weird thing with stealth in this series. It's kind of treated like an afterthought. Like in 2018, right? There weren't a whole lot of forced stealth segments, but they were there when narratively necessary. The hideouts were kind of the exception, but at the same time, it'd be too boring and too easy if you could just take out the first 10 to 15 guys stealthily and the rest of them never come out. So it gets a pass. Hell, Miles can turn invisible. So even though Miles didn't have the same tech that Peter did to complement a stealthy fighting style, the games were able to work around it in an interesting way. The basic hand-to-hand combat was okay. It was satisfactory for what I expect of a Spider-Man, and that would mostly remain unchanged in Spider-Man 2 until we get to the special attacks, which I'll elaborate on later. But for now, let's keep focused on 2018. Upon release, they already had a groundbreaking announcement that DLC was dropping in a month's time. I'm trying to tell you guys, Spider-Man fans were eating good as hell at the time, dropping DLC stories, missions, hideouts, collectibles. They already dropped 3 DLC episodes by the end of that same year. Like, dude, they were all systems go at the time. After that, technically speaking, there was no content dropping, but the game was still their first priority, and making Miles Morales too. We started getting the movie suits as DLCs. There were quality of life changes, like changing the time of day. And the story, bro. I say all this to say, guys, that from pre-production to the end of Spider-Man 2018's life cycle, Insomniac was dropping nothing but absolute hits on hits. And this isn't to slight Miles Morales in any way, because it went on to be its own great success. And so one day the question was asked, will anyone ever try to attempt to dethrone this masterpiece of a game? Well, folks, there you have it. Of course, like there was ever any doubt one of the most critically acclaimed superhero games of all time was ever gonna get a sequel. Especially with just not just one, but 2 ominous cliffhangers. Of course it was inevitable. By the end of 2021, Spider-Man 2 was well underway in production. Sony and Insomniac were so tight-lipped about the production of the game, it got so bad that the Reddit actually didn't have shit to talk about, so they just kept reposting the same tired fucking images of Peter and Miles facing that dark alley. I do not miss those times. But hey, you gotta hand it to Insomniac. there were really no reliable leaks that were coming out at the time, so all we could do is just wait. But the buildup of expectations would eventually start to spell out the downfall and the eventual bad feedback that the game was going to be slammed with. So let's fast forward to 5 days before the release date. At that point in time, 6 trailers have been released showing gameplay, story elements, other different features, whatever. And I personally think they did a little bit too much. I predicted like the first 2/3 of the story before it even came out. They teased that Kraven was coming to the city to hunt heroes and villains. Martin Lee and the rest of the Sinister Six probably weren't going to break out on their own. Instead, it was likely going to be Kraven breaking them out so he can hunt and kill them across the city. He said in the 2021 teaser that he's looking for an equal or a challenge, so it makes sense. Connors transforms into the Lizard and he needs to be transformed back into human form to help Harry's cancer.
Can't lose Connors. Harry's dying, and he's the only one who can help.
Of course, Harry is sick. He's explicitly been shown to be sick in the past 2 games. And so the only reason I could ever imagine Peter and Harry coming to blows is if Peter is selfish with the symbiote and doesn't want to give it back because of the addiction. And I don't think I'm alone when I say that was a pretty good inference. Not only did that happen in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but like I said, they're so close that only something that selfish could really drive a wedge between the two. Fast forward a little bit, it only makes sense that Kraven would eventually meet his match with someone as savage as Venom. I wasn't sure if Kraven was going to die when he fights Venom or he was going to live to see another day and fight base form Spider-Man, who really needed to get his get back. Because if you remember last time, he kind of got shanked. And if you look close enough at the Be Greater Together trailer and the 2021 teaser, to be honest, you can see that the city is abandoned. There's nobody outside walking along the streets, probably because some outside force is making them want to stay inside. That's a grand total of 4 pivotal plot points I could predict based off just the trailers. Bottom line is, that was the first great sin this game committed, which was having a mishandled PR. And Brian Intihar, the creative director at Insomniac Games, he might agree with me, because he said he had multiple meetings with Sony saying, I am not trying to show these people what we got cooking in the oven.
Something we talk a lot about, just in terms of like PR. Hi, Jen. And how much you show before even the game comes out. Yeah. Like I didn't want to show anything. Like I didn't want to show a thing. Like I was having meetings. Like I don't want to show anything. Yeah. For that very reason. Like I don't want you to go into the game thinking.
If you compare it to how Insomniac handled the PR for Marvel Spider-Man 2018, it's like night and day. Like they hardly show anything past the first half of the entire story. It's mainly just Martin Lee shit. If we translated that into Spider-Man 2, then we really wouldn't have been shown anything past the section where Lizard goes into the sewers. Again, my point is that they blew their load too quickly and wind up giving out the sauce before we even got the dish. But let's go ahead and move on to Spider-Man 2's second sin, which are weird gameplay cuts, additions, and oversights. So I'm gonna be here all fucking day. So when it pertains to gadgets, I'm not a big fan of Peter and Miles having access to the same ones. Now, I can respect they cut the quantity in half because they wanted you to work for your action and not feel like, God having so many different ways to approach combat. But dude, like with only 4 choices, seriously? They should have carried over all 12 previous gadgets and the 4 new ones and given us 16 total different options for gadgets. And then only let us be able to use 4 gadgets all at one time. Because as of right now, with Peter and Miles' special attacks basically having the same functions, there serves no real purpose in choosing one Spider-Man over the other, except for which one you find visually appealing the most. Especially if we can choose different special attacks, even though they more or less all have the same function and utilization. It's as if the game doesn't incentivize you to fight differently between using Peter and Miles or between your gadgets and different abilities. Now, the combat in the game is a bit hard to compliment because they've hardly made any real changes from the first game. Of course, they've added some finishers, some newer animations. I'll give them that. They even gave us ways to extend air combos and more versatility with the web strike ability. I have no problem giving them their full props on that. But basic grounded combat is pretty much exactly the same. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with Insomniac using previous assets on the last game and putting them in this game. There's no problem with that. But there's no reason why there shouldn't be a difference between how Peter fights when he has the symbiote and his normal base form. Symbiote Spider-Man's normal attacks should be a lot more brutal and explosive than his average everyday attacks. Otherwise, the effects of the symbiote are really only felt through voice acting and the special attacks. And the rage mode, dude, come on. This gets into a whole different subject, but I think Peter's overall moves in the symbiote form, especially his rage mode, need a complete overhaul. Now, I'm not even going to talk about Web of Shadows, but previous games, intentionally or not, had way more creativity put into their animations. This entire next minute is going to be dedicated to games from the past that have very interesting, choreography, creativity put into it that puts his wrath on full display. This is how I expect a symbiote Spider-Man to fight.
I suppose it worked.
Time for a lie down. Yeah? Let's see how tough they are.
So yeah, I hope you guys kind of see what direction I think symbiote combat should have really went to, because just throwing out brute force tendrils, it looks cool on paper for maybe the first 30 seconds, but after a while it gets really flaccid. Like, oh wow, a flip and a ground slam. Okay, well, a jump and a slam to the ground. That's actually okay. I'm cool with that. An animation currently in Spider-Man 2 that I think should have been exclusive to the symbiote is the one where he kicks down your fucking esophagus. Now again, I don't have a problem with Spider-Man using symbiote tendrils, but I like when Peter uses all of his powers in tandem to get the point across that you're not on his level. But enough about that. Let's go back to what we were talking about earlier about stealth. So stealth across the board, if it was already somewhat in the backseat in Spider-Man 1, then it's pretty much halfway hanging out the trunk in Spider-Man 2. There are no more forced stealth segments, at least for either Peter or Miles, which is really disappointing because we could have had some very interesting stealth segments regarding the black suit because of how easy it is for it to blend into the background. Miles' camouflage offers no real advantage either. In fact, I don't know if you guys noticed, but they skipped entirely telling us that he can go camouflage. I'm so serious. Go replay the beginning of the game again. They do not tell you or show you that you can use Miles' camouflage. And it's not even an upgradable skill or ability. I think that's enough proof that stealth really is not a big concern going further into the future. Which by all means, fine, but why even include it as a way to approach the game if it doesn't serve the mission in any meaningful way? In short, if you're not going to make a gameplay factor or element mandatory, then maybe you should reconsider its place in the game. And the last segment of gameplay I'm about to talk about today are the crimes and basically everything you can do around the city. Like, first off, there's way less of a variety of crimes to stop in Spider-Man 2 than in the first one. There were kidnappings, you could save people from exploding vehicles, you could actually do more than just press 2 buttons when it came to stopping a car chase. Those kind of things make sense for Spider-Man to stop on an average everyday basis. It makes for a more well-rounded Spider-Man experience other than just swing to an area, fight people, maybe web up some fires, maybe drop someone else at the hospital. That's it. Like, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, if I really wanted to go down that path, I could really elaborate on every single section I just talked about much more, but I'm not gonna keep you guys here. But overall, it just falls short in a lot of aspects in comparison to Spider-Man 1. We're now at a year since release date, and they just announced there will be no DLC. Meanwhile, in Spider-Man 1, DLC for all 3 episodes released before the end of that same year. I completely do not fault people for thinking that Spider-Man 1 was the all-around much better cohesive game. And don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed the game all the way through 100%. It just gets me depressed and upset knowing what the game could have been. Like, there was so much untapped potential regarding the story, gameplay elements, possibly suit customizations. Do you know how epic it would have been to have a suit customization feature that can let you switch between different styles of eyes, suit logos, patterns like web patterns and and everything from, you know, illustrators, you know, comics, all that type of stuff. I guess you could halfway count this video as a review for Spider-Man 2. What would I rate this game on a 1 to 10? There's only one phrase that summarizes how I really feel about this game. I'll let Doc Ock tell you himself.
Brilliant but lazy.
So because I've been inactive for this long, I need to get my statistics and interactions back up. So if you guys could just give me the 50 likes, I'll go ahead and push out a Spider-Man DLC suit ranking video. Otherwise, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. GTG out.